All right. Hello, everyone. Uh, so this is going to be another video on Python. So we're going to get a little bit more advanced in this video. So this one is going to cover the following topics. We're going to look at how to use your custom Python files. So let's say you created your own .py file and it has a lot of great code in it, and you want to use it in another Python program that you created. So we're going to talk about how to do that. It's fairly straightforward, pretty simple. We're going to expand on using classes and some of the benefits that you can have with those. We're going to look real quick at having information in memory versus long time storage and different approaches for that. Some of the benefits and some of the drawbacks from each of those, and then we'll get a little bit more about user input. So we're going to tie all those concepts together for a single program utilizing multiple files. So let's get started. So first thing here, again, I'm using Visual Studio Code, and I'm just going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this one main.py. Okay, we can see we have it here. And at the same time, I'm going to go ahead in this same folder and create a second folder or second program. And I'm going to actually call this one person.py. And inside person.py, I'm going to include a class that you can use to represent a person and their attributes. So this goes back into some of the aspects of Python being able to be object-oriented programming language. So to get started here, I'm just going to create a class, and I'm going to call it person. And again, with Python, when we are implementing some code related to a hierarchy, we use a colon, and then we're everything associated with that item, that code, then has an indent level. So everything with one indent here underneath person will then have be related to this particular class. As soon as we break that and go to the left, then we're outside of the class properties. So classes, again, have a special method, definition, function, different words for the same concept, and that's called init, with two underscores on each side. So with init, one of the things that can be done, and again, if you've watched my getting started with Python video, you can see this, is that you can create variables, attributes associated with that. And then every time you call it, you can initialize it with those set of variables that you pass. So we just put in a set of parentheses. If you leave it default, every time you initialize it, it'll have the same values. But in this case, let's think about what a person will have. They're going to have a name, an age, a let's see, a city they live in. That's good for now. And again, for this definition, for this function, we're going to have to outline what it does. So we're putting in a colon. And again, you see we're indented. So, and of course, one of the keywords that I forgot here is self. So that allows everything within the person that's get created to reference itself when an instance is created. So again, we have self.name equals name. So this is taking the name that we pass here and assigning it to its own self.name value. Self.age equals age, and self.city equals city. But it's not limited to just these attributes that you pass in. you can have a any number of variables that are associated with it. And you could say, self dot species equals human. And then everyone that gets created is automatically going to have a self dot species. And then one other thing that I want to add in here is if you have a double underscore at the beginning of a variable, it becomes private. So let's say self dot, I don't know, car. So underscore underscore car. And then you say equals, they drive a Prius. Let's go with that. All right. And then that's it for this initialization function for a person. But then we can go and create additional functions, def, let's call it, in this case, we don't need to have the underscore underscore, but let's call it, all right, so we're going to create a function called happy birthday. And what it does is it takes self dot age. Again, we still have access to the self object because it's initialized within the entire person scope. And we equal self dot age plus 1. Let's see what we do here. Oh, and I also need to pass in self, of course, because it's part of the object. So this is kind of a hidden variable that you see. You'll see this in just a minute when we call these functions. When we're initializing, we'll only pass in 3 parameters. The self is implied when it's included. It's kind of a special attribute or variable that you pass in. Okay, and that should be good for now. So in our main program, we're going to go back over here and let's say we want to create a person. So in order to have access to this local file we just created, we need to do an import statement. So we'll do import, where actually in this case, you can have multiple classes inside of a single Python file, but we only care about the person class. So we would say from person import person. So in this case, person is a reference to the class. This is a reference to the file name. So our file name is person.py with lowercase, and capital P person is our class. So now we can say, let's see, it'll say Sean equals person. All right, and then again, you can see what variables need to be passed. We need to pass in a name, Sean, separated by a comma. His age, we'll call him 37. And city, we'll call that, I don't know, Birmingham. All right. So now, if we do that and we run our main.py, again, we're within the, actually, I need to move into the directory. I'm only in the demo code directory. This code that I created is in code demo 2. All right, now if I do Python and main.py, maybe we don't really see anything happen, but the code did execute. So now to demonstrate this, we can do print and say Sean dot name. and we can see that it prints out Sean. If we look at our person, they also had a species that was included. So we can do print Sean.name, put a comma here, and do Sean.species. We see Sean and human. But now if we try to access Sean.__car, we get an error saying it has no attribute car. Maybe looking at that, well, yes, it does. It's right here. That's because it is private, and as a result, it can't be accessed from external programs or external implementations. So we'll come back to that in just a second. We'll just print out Sean and then age. And then on top of that, we're going to do Sean.happy birthday. Again, it doesn't take any parameters, even though it has a self. And then we'll do the same thing. I'll just copy this. And you can see first time we get Sean human and 37 and Sean human and 38 because happy birthday increased the age. But if we run this again, we see it starts with 37 and 38. All of this is only stored in the program for as long as it exists, and then it's deleted. It's ignored. So one thing we can do is we can create a function and call it save person, pass in self. And this gets into some of the briefly touched upon topics in other videos about how to save files. So we're going to use what we've used before. We'll just kind of use a shorthand F to create an instance of a file application equals open. And we're going to create a file called person.txt. Actually, we'll do it as let's do it as a JSON file. No, we did JSON before. We'll do it as a regular file for now. All right. And then what we can do is we can say we want it to open in a write mode, W. So we'll do F, our instance of the file that we create, dot write. And what we're going to do is we're going to write in self.name and then plus a new line character. And then we could do the same thing for each of the different variables. All right, so age. Now you'll see here that while we're referencing __car from this method, because it exists inside the person class, it will have access. And then, of course, after we write everything, we do f.close. And let's go ahead and do this real quick. Sean.savePerson. And what you'll see after we run it this time is we'll get a new file that's created here. Hopefully. All right, let's see what I did here. Okay, so I may want to just verify that these are strings. So we can wrap what we have here in a string. So if you use the str method and wrap in a variable, it'll force it to be a string. And it's primarily because of age, which was being treated as an integer. All right, so if we try this again, all right, we see we got the output, and then we also had this person.text, and the new line character just separated everything into a new line. That's great. Again, if we run it again, you still see 37, 38, and nothing has changed here. So what we can do now is we're going to change person and say def load person. And we're going to basically do the opposite. So we're going to say f equals open person.text. In this case, we're going to read it with R, and then create a variable called content equals f.read lines. So what this will do is it'll create an array, a list called content, and then for each line, it'll be one value stored. Okay, so now we can use a for loop for item in content. So this is a Python way to iterate through a list of items. And it's going to store the current item as a value called item. We're going to basically create a brand new person for that. So let's create a temporary variable. Actually, the better way to probably do it in this case is, again, since we know exactly what content is, we can say we're going to create a new person. And you can create a new person within your own person class. I'm going to say content. And it's going to be their name is in the 0th index in the list. Again, because it's the first item pulled in. Then we're also going to do the same thing for age. And the city. Okay, so we also need the human and the Prius. So in this case, let's create another method to set car. And we're going to take in a variable, a string. And of course, we need to have self. So we'll do self dot underscore underscore car equals car type. And then we can do the same thing for setting, well, I'll show you a different way for that. So we've created right now a person with the default values. And then we'll say p dot city or species equals content 3. And we'll do p dot set car. That's going to be the value of content 4. And that'll save it into this p variable. Okay, so now we can say return our variable. And actually make sure I close this. So we'll go back here and we'll create a new person called let's say we want to load the values for Sean. It doesn't quite make sense the way we do this, so we're just looking at it for now. For simplicity, and we'll go into a new way to do it in a minute. And load person. All right, and then we'll print again. If we run this, person. Oh, I need to have self. If I want to do it this way. All right, and we can see that we have the values here. And one thing that you notice that's different here is that it added in the extra values here. So basically added a new line for each of those values instead of printing them, because when we pass in the values directly from content, this content 0 also includes the new line. So you can use something like dot strip, which will take off all of those extra characters. Uh, and now you see that the value was the same there. So let's real quick, let's not save this person. Let's comment out this code here. And now, so we're going to initially have, let me put in a real quick pause here temporarily. And one way I can do that is just say any value. So I can say use the input function, which provides a prompt to the user, and then just say pause. So what this is going to do is it's going to pause at this point in the code and wait till I hit enter. And then once I do, it'll continue. And I'm going to do this just so I can modify the value so you can see it persisting. All right, so what is going to happen here is it's going to create a person named Sean, 37 Birmingham, with all the other default values. And then again, we see that pause prompt. I'm going to go in here and let's say, let's change an age to 25 and have him drive a, I don't know, a minivan. Now, if I continue here, it's going to load what this file currently has. And then it prints out the latest values. Again, so this was one way of loading a person, but I can actually take this and I want to have it exist outside of our person class. And I'll take off the self. All right, and I can fix the tabbing. Okay, so basically we have the same thing it's going to do. And I can also have a takes nothing. And then, actually, I don't think well, I'll just do that. And then pass. Actually, I'll have to take self. Now, I should actually, that shouldn't matter in that case. Sorry for the confusion here. I can take that off. And what I can do to gain access to that method that exists outside the class, I could just import the whole file. And now I can create a brand new person here. Again, I'll call him Sean equals person, the lowercase, the file dot load person. I can get rid of this pause for now. And then I can, again, print Sean.name, Sean.species, and Sean.age. So what this should do is allow me to go ahead and pull whatever is in the file. And then I can even print Sean. Let's see. What was the name of it? It was I didn't create a get car method. I'll get a get method, def get car. So this allows me to get access to this private variable. Again, we couldn't get it earlier, but what we can do here is pull it in. This method has access to it, and then it returns that variable. Okay, let's see. So it printed out name, but then, oh, because when I just, without the parentheses, it's trying to print out the method, the definition that we created. Need to have the parentheses there. And you can see that it matches what's in here. So that's one way you can have data persist from one instance to another instead of having to recreate it each time you save it to a file. We can do other things to optimize this. Instead of hard coding the person .text file as a file name, you can pass that in as a variable, and then you can have the file name listed each time. Because right now, if we try to do this with multiple people, it's always going to overwrite this person.text. But if we have it saved to a specific file name and you pass in the load, in fact, let's do that real quick because it's not that hard. All right, so now we're going to just use person.text as a file name. And we can have the same attributes. At the same time, I'll call this Bob. Okay, so now we have it'll save a file called bob.text. And then we can do the same thing, here, just print Bob. So we're creating a brand new person that'll persist in memory or on the hard drive. We've got our person.txt here, and you can see that it pulled all the data from that file and printed it. Okay, so we talked a little bit on classes. We talked about pulling in from other custom created files. We talked a little bit about the memory versus long-term storage. In general, if something could be stored in memory, it's a lot faster. Reading and writing, the I/O operations, input output, is one of the slowest aspects of most computers. So if you have a lot of files being read and written, it'll slow down your process. If you can have the information loaded and stored in memory, it'll run a lot faster. And then the last other thing was user input. We talked a little bit with the pause, but let's say we wanted to create a new user down here. You can say, so again, we use input to say we want to do a prompt. And what else? All right, so we're going to just create a new person. And we're going to pass in what we just pulled in from the user. Then we're going to save that person. And what we're going to do in this case, we're going to just take their name. So we're going to take the string value for name, and then add .txt. Now, if we run it again, okay, so we're going to get a prompt down here. So I'd enter the name of your person, call it Mort, give him an age 100, and his species is an alien. And then we get a file named mort.txt, and all the other information is present. So this is, again, still very basic level of Python, but it should be helpful in understanding some of the more advanced concepts. Some other videos that are coming forward are going to be dealing with packages that aren't standard that you need to install with the pip library, error handling, try and accept blocks, some other special commands that you can use for limiting access to a specific file. So all kinds of great stuff is coming, so stay tuned for that.
Good news, everyone.
That's right. Good news, everyone. This is Doc here. Made it to the end of the video, which means you liked it. So please click on the thumbs up below the video. If you have any comments, anything else you'd like me to see put a video together for, leave a comment, ask any questions. And of course, more videos like this are coming, so be sure to subscribe.